This is your essential business briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, why are more people quitting their jobs during the pandemic? We'll speak to a recruitment expert about the changes and challenges in the labour market. As European ministers agree a new mega package of funding for farmers, how important is agriculture to the EU economy? Plus, packed shelves but no staff. We go inside the unmanned supermarkets serving isolated communities in Sweden. First, has the past year forced you into rethinking your career? If so, you're not alone. In the United States, more workers are quitting their jobs than at any time in the past 2 decades. A recent survey by financial firm Prudential also found a quarter of employees were planning to leave their current roles. This as sectors including hospitality and logistics are struggling to recruit staff. Let's speak now to Daniel Chait, who's CEO and co-founder of the recruitment technology firm Greenhouse Software. He's also the co-author of the book Talent Makers, How the Best Organisations Win Through Structured and Inclusive Hiring. Daniel, thanks very much for being with us. What is driving this desire for people to change their jobs now?
Yeah, well, in the very first line of the book, we say the war for talent is over and the talent has won. What we mean by that is people are more in control of their careers than ever before. So it's easier to find out about new jobs. It's easier to apply to new jobs. And then when you add on all the dislocation that happened in 2020, people are now able to work remotely at so many more companies than they did before, that the universe of possibilities is just even more widely, opened up. And then you add into that the idea that people are kind of taking stock of their lives. They may have been dislocated or moved out of a big city. And it's sort of an opportunity for so many people to sort of reconsider what is it that they want to do next in their career. It's just like all happening at once.
Is it in specific sectors that we're seeing more people that are excited to change jobs?
Well, I think you're seeing it in any kind of job that's been really dislocated by the pandemic. And so obviously every knowledge worker who had to go remote is in that position, right? So that's tech companies, it's finance and banking, consulting, media, all those types of workers. They're no longer coming together into an office anymore. And so, they're in a position where they're more of a free agent at this moment, and they kind of look around and say, what next?
And of course, it's a problem that they're even seeing in the likes of hospitality now, which isn't connected to remote working, but simply a fact they're having a shortage of getting people for those jobs. How different is the situation in your eyes between the United States and the countries in Europe where you're working?
Well, when we talk to our customers in Europe, like Stripe or Booking.com, they're Intercomi, they're growing incredibly fast as well. And so, every company that is in any kind of online service is benefiting tremendously. Of course, you have local differences in terms of vaccination rollouts and sort of border and travel issues that are different in Europe to the States. And so that's causing maybe like a time delay. And I feel like some of the progress that you see as even within the United States, where different states open up at different periods of time as vaccination rates increase, similarly in various parts of Europe, you're seeing vaccination rates trail or lead, and that's causing different kind of patterns and opening up. But it's all the same story, just playing out a few months, like shifted in time.
It's a big debate over hybrid working that we're hearing in so many companies now. We've had the Swiss bank UBS recently say they're going to offer hybrid to the majority of their employees. How flexible do employers have to be on that issue now? Because we know some companies do want their staff back in the office.
Yeah, different companies are doing different things. I think the only trend that you can really say is true is uncertainty, right? Everybody's kind of waiting to see what everybody else does, because the driving factor here is competition for talent, right? Companies have been increasingly competing for talent for decades now, but with the dislocation and the job turnover numbers that you're talking about and the increasing shortages of great talent, companies are trying to figure out, do we need to have an office in order to appeal to workers? Do we need to strengthen our remote work offerings in order to appeal to workers? Or what are the expectations that the talent is going to put onto our organization? So everyone's kind of scrambling to try to figure that out right now. The next 18 months or so is really going to tell the story.
Is it a job seekers market now?
Absolutely. Again, I go back to that line that we put very, very first line in the book, Talent Makers. The war for talent is over and the talent has won. Look, companies today get more value out of their human capital than out of all their other forms of capital, and they know it. At the same time, as companies need people more than ever, every individual person knows that they have so much more opportunity in the workforce. It's so easy for you to work at any organization, anywhere with online work. You have so much more information now with LinkedIn and the job review sites. You can learn about the company's culture and other job opportunities. And so it really is an employee's market, and companies need to realize that they need to stand out. They need to get out there and be active and compete for talent. They need to show that they're an inclusive organization where people can really show up and do their best work. And so the onus is on the organizations to show employees why they should join and stay, and not on the employee anymore.
One of the issues that you tackle in the book is this idea of inclusive hiring. How should companies be tackling that? And are you finding there's sufficient interest and drive from employers to address it?
There's a tremendous amount of interest. I think, how to solve it is maybe a longer conversation, but I would say that the most fundamental thing that every company should be doing is structuring their hiring process. When I say structuring, what I mean is if you just leave hiring up to every individual to kind of figure out on their own, what interview questions are you going to ask? Where are you going to post your job ads online? What you're going to get is going to be the result of just kind of people's default behavior, and that includes a lot of bias. But by structuring your interview questions, by assigning specific roles to specific interviewers, by measuring and tracking exactly where you're finding candidates and the demographic mix of those sources, you have a much better chance of being inclusive. And what that really means is you're better able to compete for more talent by eliminating the causes of unfair bias that rule out people who otherwise would be great at your organization.
Companies go a long way during, for example, Pride Month to try and demonstrate their commitment to diversity in that area. But I wonder, does that really actually resonate with job seekers? We see a lot of criticism about tokenism from the LGBT community. Do you think that is it something that really people will apply to a job if they see that a company has done well during Pride Month?
I don't know that changing your logo on social media or sponsoring a float in the local parade is like the difference maker. Look, it's good that people are making those expressions. It's better that they do those things than that they don't. But I think candidates can tell the difference between when a company is just sort of waving a flag or checking a box and how they really behave. So the thing you can do as an organization is you can make sure that when your interviewers show up to meet with a candidate, or when you're sending emails out to prospects to get them interested, or when people read about your organization online, that those facts tell the true story about your company as an inclusive organization. And there's no shortcut there. You just have to do the work. I think candidates can tell the difference.
Okay, Daniel Chait from Greenhouse Software, thank you very much for speaking to us. Now, the EU's agriculture ministers have signed off on changes to the European Union's massive farm subsidy programme. The Common Agricultural Policy accounts for around a third of the EU's budget, or €270 billion for the period until 2027. The cap aims to provide a fair income for European farmers and food security for consumers. This deal includes more money for small farms and environmentally friendly initiatives, but critics say it doesn't go far enough toward meeting EU climate goals. Cole Stangler's here with more on this. Cole, the cap is a huge slab of the EU budget, but how important is the agricultural sector to the European economy?
Well, last year, farming accounted for 1.3% of the EU's total GDP. That's almost 180 billion euros. The four biggest EU economies, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, produced more than half of the bloc's total agricultural output. France contributed the biggest share, as you can see there. And while they make up a smaller proportion of the union's total, countries like Poland and Romania, agriculture is a more important part of the domestic economy. So farming, not as economically significant in the EU as it is elsewhere, particularly developing countries, or even in Brazil, where agriculture makes up over 4% of GDP. On the other hand, in the US, farms generate just 0.6% of GDP.
So how many people work in this area in the EU?
Well, official figures say that just under 10 million people in the EU work in agriculture. That figure includes part-time farmers and also those who might help out on family farms at different points in the year. And while the U.S. has more farmland, the EU actually has 5 times as many farms as the States. It should be said too, Stephen, this is not a sector that pays very well. In the EU, agricultural wages were just under half of what European workers were earning on average.
What are the big challenges then facing this sector?
Well, the biggest one is arguably climate change. Summers are hotter, prolonged droughts are more frequent, inclement weather overall is on the rise. Just this year here in France, we saw a cold spell wreak havoc on vineyards, ultimately knocking out just about a third of overall wine production. Another big issue is trade. While the EU might be a net exporter of agricultural products, European farmers are also competing with imports from around the world. So fruits and vegetables from Africa, soybeans from the US, beef from Latin America. That's why agriculture is so often a sticking point when it comes to trade deals.
Okay, Costangler, thank you. Next, to a problem facing rural communities in many parts of the world: how to keep local businesses alive. In Sweden, one solution that's proving successful is unmanned shops housed in mobile containers. There are now dozens dotted around the country, as Emerald Maxwell reports.
Deep in the Swedish countryside, residents of the tiny hamlet of Veckholm used to have to drive half an hour to the nearest shop. Now, they just have to pop into this container. Open 24 hours a day, it's the most convenient of convenience stores. Selling hundreds of items, it's fully automated, with no cashier in sight.
It's a little bit more expensive than if you go to big stores, but it's closer to home, so you don't need to drive.
The community fought to bring the unmanned store here after losing their last local shop.
We don't want to have this area to die, because if you lost your grocery store or school or everything, then everybody's moving out.
Shoppers unlock the door and scan their purchases with an app on their smartphone, linked to their bank account and ID. The store manager only comes by a few hours a week to receive deliveries. He manages 3 stores like this and says they don't worry about theft.
We can find out when it happened and who that person is by the bank ID. Like in a regular store, you don't know. You enter, you're anonymous. Even if you're caught on camera, they don't know who you are.
Co-founder Daniel Lund has opened almost 30 unmanned stores in Sweden in the past 2 years.
To be able to keep a low price for the customer, we have to be able to control our cost of operations. So that's controlling the rent, so that's why the stores are quite small, but also control the staffing cost.
Lund believes unstaffed stores like these are the future for Sweden, one of the most digitalised countries in the world.
That's it from us for now, but you'll find plenty more business stories on the France 24 website. And if you'd like to get in touch with your comments or questions, you'll find me and the team on social media. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Football is coming home on France 24. Follow our Euro 2020 show on every match day. All the drama, all the results, and of course, in-depth analysis of your favourite teams. It's all on France 24.
Watch events unfold on France 24 and France24.com.